All right, good morning. Welcome to Waters Garden Center. My name is Michelle and this is Doug, and we're going to be teaching the Newcomers class today. This class is more of how-tos, wins, and that type of thing, a lot of question and answer.
The premise of this class is really that most of us have learned to garden somewhere else. And we moved here, and maybe you've been here for a little while, and just dabbled in gardening, whatever the case is. We talk about the various factors that make gardening here different and challenging, and how to be successful doing all those things. We'll talk about all those things that will include altitude, soil, humidity, weather, animals, all of those factors, and we'll discuss pros and cons, best practices. We will talk about some products we have here, also show you some of the plants that we carry, plants that everything that we bring in here we believe is going to be successful. So we won't see any eucalyptus or avocado trees, no need to ask for them, we never have them. And then, as Michelle mentioned, we'll have question and answer in the course of the class, but let's not get too specific. We can stick around afterwards, and happy to show you around as well. We have fruit trees, flowering trees, deciduous, still have some herbs, berries, a whole range of things that should be able to do well in your garden. So that's kind of the big picture of the class. And Michelle and I have done this class quite a few times. Usually what we'll do is I'll warm up the audience with corny jokes, and then Michelle will answer all the tough questions. And so we're a good team in that sense. And so, Michelle, you want to start out?
Yeah, something about Prescott is that that's different than a lot of other places is that we have our altitude, which we are at 5,000 feet, mile high basically, depending on where you're at in this area. And we have a full gambit of elevations here. Some places in Green Creek are 6,200. Down in Dewey, we are at 4,600. So, I mean, that's a pretty wide range of elevation. But generally, our hardiness zone is a zone 7. The way the hardiness zone works is that the lower the number, the more cold hardy things are. So that's kind of what you're looking for. If you're kind of worried about something, always go to a lower number to be sure. On the other side of it, the higher the number, the more heat it can take. So Mayor is in the zone 8, so I mean it just shows you how 15 miles can make a huge difference in things. Seasons wise, we do have a full gambit of seasons. Our freeze dates, our last frost is usually in May, usually around Mother's Day. Depends on the year. This year was kind of a really strange beginning. We were moist, we had a lot more moisture, and we were colder than normal in that April and May area. Usually our first frost is October, late October. Kind of keep those things in mind when you're planting a vegetable garden, or when you're looking to set plants in or out, whether you need to bring them inside or outside. The other thing to kind of consider is that we do freeze, we do get cold. Usually we don't get any lower temperature than 5 degrees. Which is pretty chilly, but we usually don't stay there very long. So we don't freeze, our pots don't completely go frozen, which is a nice thing because you can do containers here.
Well, the other part of the altitude that Michelle mentioned is that we have a big range, temperature range. From even in the wintertime, we can have mild days, maybe we're in the 50s and the 60s, and then maybe go down to 20 at night. So that has an effect on the plants. And as we talked about, Michelle mentioned Mother's Day, and this year that didn't work very well, but Mother's Day is sort of the kind of cutoff date for when you can plant vegetables and warm season plants. But really the key for most of the summer vegetables is they like the nighttime low temperature to be 50 degrees. So you know how it is in May, we can have some really nice days, but we're not even close to 50 at night. We may be 40, 35, somewhere around there. So what happens usually every spring is that most of us are gardeners and we're kind of impatient and we have a nice sunny day and we start thinking about tomatoes. I want tomatoes, I want peppers and eggplant. And they come in and buy a bunch of plants, and then lo and behold, a week or two later, all of a sudden, whoops, it was 30 last night. And some of the plants don't survive. Some might. I've had that experience because I've done the same thing myself where they sort of survive. It seems like they're okay, but really they're just kind of in neutral. They're not going to produce any fruit. They're not going to grow. They're just going to sit there and kind of mock you and say, okay, you set me out here too early, and now I'm just going to sit here. And I'm not going to produce any tomatoes this year. So that's a big challenge. And this year, because we have warm and cold, there were folks coming by for the second round, third round of tomatoes. Some people have protected places, greenhouses, and they learn to work that. That's a little more work than I care to do. But that big difference in daytime, nighttime temperatures is something to keep track of, something to be aware of when you consider your planting. I recall this winter, I think there were 2 mornings when it was down to 8 degrees. Well, that's pretty chilly for our plants are not really used to that. And then, of course, this last winter, I'm sure you remember, we had pretty sizable snow. I was throwing, on top of the 2.5 feet of snow, I was throwing snow from the driveway on top of that, which was on top of plants. And because I couldn't throw it any farther than that, but they seem to do okay. So the plants do have some resilience. You just have to be aware, as we normally are, okay, what's the weather going to be like? How warm or cold is it going to be tonight before you start thinking about setting things out in the springtime.
And it's one of those things that, to garden, we should start an arsenal in your garage or storage shed or wherever, where, you're putting frost cloth or extra blankets. You can go to Goodwill and pick up a blanket for $1. Just something to protect, to put over it, to just raise that temperature, 5 or 10 degrees. So you can put blankets. Absolutely. I mean, as long as you have support, you don't want it to, squish it. So there are ways around our temperatures, and that's kind of one of the things that we like to teach is, create microclimates where you're getting a couple extra degrees if you have your plants right next to your house. Reflective heat will add that. So these are the things that we're going to kind of teach you, along with how to plant, what to plant, and when to plant.
And as far as covering up, we do have a sort of frost cloth, it's called. I think it's kind of cheesecloth. And actually we use it quite a bit here in the springtime because we'll have plants that are flowering and doing really well, and then it's going to be cold at night. And so we cover them up. Sometimes we cover up a lot of them. It's kind of a chore at the end of the day, and then you have to uncover them in the morning. I guess I'm getting feedback. Maybe you should come.
Okay. Let's get started with our soil. I don't know how many of you have actually tried to dig a hole here. It is quite a challenge. One of the first tools I would put in my arsenal is a pick or a pry bar or something like that, because if you just try to use a shovel, it's not going to work unless you live in Old Town Prescott, where there is a lot of more established, where someone else has done all that hard work for you, gotten all the rocks out. The pick is a great tool to have because it sure makes digging a hole easier. When you are digging a hole and when you're planning on investing in some larger trees, some shrubs, especially if you're brand new to the property and don't know what your drainage is like, we have what we call a perk test. Basically, you dig your hole, you fill it up with water, and just wait to see how long it actually takes you for it to drain. If you're living up on Thumb Butte and you have bedrock there, you probably aren't going to drain much. So there are ways of getting around that, whether you bring in topsoil and create berms, so you get extra drainage that way, or finding another spot on your property that hopefully doesn't have that bedrock underneath it. When you're planting, you want to go through how to plant?
Yeah, let me add to the soil situation that Michelle was talking about. Some of us have rocks, some of us have clay, caliche. A few people have sort of a sandy, decomposed granite soil. Those soils drain quickly. But what can happen is, even within your yard, you can have pockets of good areas and other areas that aren't so good. As an example, I was helping my sister-in-law in Granville figure out why plants kept dying in this one spot. And so I took out the latest dead plant, and the root ball was dripping wet. I mean, it was like you had just squeezed a sponge. And this hole was surrounded by a terracotta wall. And so we concluded, and I told Sue that really the best thing to grow in this spot would be a boulder. Because, but the point is that the rest of her yard must have been really good soil because she had either cedars and redbuds and shrubs that were doing really well. So you may find that like right here where you want to put a plant is maybe not the best place. And it could be that you've got this little pocket here. So when we do plant, yes ma'am.
How deeply do you worry about drainage? Like how deep that hole is?
Okay, so I'm going to get to that point right now. Anytime that you are planting a tree or a shrub, what you want to do is only dig down to the same depth as the root ball. But then the width of the hole should be about 3 times the width of the pot, the same root ball. And so what you do is you dig all that out, remove any debris, any rocks larger than a golf ball, and then mix in the native soil with our mulch. We have some right here. About 1 part mulch and 2 parts native soil. And then you don't have to go too far where it's a little more suitable. We have a planting crew. They have jackhammers on their truck. And so they're prepared for anything. And that's what the kind of thing that you may have that in your yard. Some of you may have great topsoil. If you do, let me know. I might want to move there because anytime I go to plant something, the second or third shovelful, usually I hit rock and I say, okay, that's it. But so that's what we recommend. That's what our planting crew. That's the guideline they use for planting in the soil around here.
So the next thing we want to talk about is fertilization. Our soil here has a very high pH level, and so when plants try to intake what little nutrients that we actually have in our soil, it's very difficult for them to do so. So Ken has created his own fertilizer that he formulated for this specific area. So it has sulfur in it to help lower that pH. It's a 744, it's a slow release fertilizer. Everybody always comes in and asks me about the 10-10-10. I need 10-10-10. 10-10-10 is going to be a synthetic fertilizer, and it's something that's basically petroleum based. Ours is all natural. Basically, it's mostly cottonseed meal, So it's basically organic. It also is, it releases slowly, so you don't have to dig it in or, worry about burning or any of that type of thing. Her question was, can you top dress? We call ourselves very lazy gardeners. We like to just throw it out and let the monsoons or our watering systems work it in. So, you do not necessarily have to work it in. You can put it on top, put it around your plants, that's fine. It's not going to burn your plants. So even when you're planting, when our planting crews go out, we actually mix that in with the mix that we put back into the hole. Another product that we use when we're planting is root and grow, which is a root stimulant that has a higher middle number, which is phosphate, that gets those roots going. And it also reduces shock, transplant shock, that sometime in the heat we can really, plants really take a hit.
Could you repeat that? Wait, what you just said?
Fertilizer or root and grow? Root and grow. Yeah, that's our all.
So this is the fertilizer. And,
I forgot the root and grow.
yeah, okay. So here's one thing I'd like to add about the fertilizer. If you want to be precise, there are instructions here on how many ounces to put down, say based on the thickness of the trunk of the tree. And I read that once and I thought, this means I have to do mathematics in the garage. And, since I want to fertilize the area and be done with it, I developed what I think is a pretty unscientific method. And I walk around with a bucket of this fertilizer in one hand, and then this other hand just applies it like this. Kind of reminds me when I used to play baseball. And so if you're a tree, you get 3 or 4. If you're a shrub, maybe you get 3 handfuls. But you can work it into your plants and your vegetables as well. And I just kind of do this until the whole yard has been fertilized. And I've been using this fertilizer for quite a few years, and I can tell you that I have a number of large deciduous trees that are about 11 years old. They have never looked better. So I think it really works. And as Michelle mentioned, you spill it, you're not going to burn anything, there's nothing chemical in there. And you apply it 3 times a year, and because it's slow release, you have a continuous feeding of nutrients to the tree, and it works well. And the fact that you can feed everything, you don't have to do the tomatoes over here and the roses over there, different containers. One container, one bucket, with the easy application method this time.
Best time to apply?
Best time to apply. There are several times during the year. Easter, 4th of July, Halloween,
And for evergreens, you want to add the New Year's application. Deciduous stuff really doesn't need anything while they're dormant. So just concentrate that New Year's on your evergreens, your blue spruce, your pines, photinias, all that stuff that stays green, junipers. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing, once you are planting, so you put your plant in the hole. Next question is how much do I water? Oh, I'm going to backtrack really quick. With the fertilizer, the one thing, it is people and pets safe. However, we have had a few dogs that put your bag away where they can't get to it. They like to eat it, and if they eat enough of it, it will make them very sick. So just on the safety precaution, we'll put it away. If it's in the ground, usually there's not enough of it for them for it to worry about. Okay, so next question is how to water. So one of the questions that I always get asked, or they come in and my plant's dying, and one of the first questions that we ask is how much are you watering, how often are you watering, and I get the shrug of the shoulders. I've got a drip system, it's all taken care of. So basically, for me, that doesn't answer any of those questions. I need to know how much water is actually going on that plant to help. So you don't necessarily have to water as often as you think you do. People that come in, oh, I'm watering every other day. Okay, why are we watering every other day? Unless you have a lot of small pots or very small plants that you just put in, every other day isn't doing you or your plants any good. The more you water, the higher the root system, because they don't have to go down. You're giving it all they need right up here. You want those roots to actually go down into the soil. You want deep root systems. So what we recommend is twice a week for newly planted plants. And that goes for trees, shrubs, perennials. You, again, depending on the size of them, you might need to add a third one. But typically, twice a week. Her question is how long and how much. I was just getting to that. So basically, we kind of go by the size of the plant that you purchased, and this is for newly planted plants. It sounds really funny, so this is a gallon plant. This one needs a gallon twice a week. Trees that are in a 25-gallon bucket are going to need 25 gallons twice a week. Does that sound excessive? Maybe, maybe not. It kind of depends on where you're at. Is this the law? No. Because if you were in Granville with the clay, you might not even have to do twice a week because clay actually holds that moisture. So for a while, you're going to have to kind of check. Moisture meters are wonderful tools. Another one for your arsenal. I always used to be a big finger person. It's like, I don't need a moisture meter. I can tell what it is. But if you go out in the early morning, your soil is cold and you really can't feel whether there's moisture in there or it's just cold soil. The other thing I like to do is I have a piece of rebar that I'll pop into a planting hole. I like the rebar because it has a twisty curlicue, and it'll actually bring soil up when it comes out, and I can actually feel what that is like there. So we want our plants to be moist. We don't want them soggy. Plants actually need air to live. If you have compacted clay soil, a lot of times they'll just suffocate and die. So it's really, really important that you do not overwater.
Yes, and that's a really good point about overwatering. I'll get to you in just a minute. As an example, a gentleman came in last summer and he showed me a picture of his blue spruce, which did not look good at all. It was a lot of brown, and he was kind of unhappy, trying to figure out what was happening with the tree. And he said, look, I don't know what's happening with my blue spruce. It's not doing well, even though I water it every day for 5 minutes. So I said, well, there's the problem. What you should try is maybe 1 hour every 10 days. And he looked at me like I was nuts. But really, I think that it's very easy, especially with evergreens, to overwater them. Evergreens can hang on to water, and we all have a tendency, if something that looks like it's not doing very well, to give it more water, and maybe the problem is it already has too much water. I did this myself this summer. I put it in a brand new lavender, and it started to not look very good. So what did I do? I gave it more water. This is what I tell people not to do, and I'm doing that at home. I finally pulled out that lavender and said, okay, I'm going to start over again and try it again. But we have a planting guide, this little brochure here, and it's got a guide on size of the plant, how much water, year 1, year 2, and beyond. One of the things we did mention is winter watering is important to continue and maintain if we have a mild, dry winter. I didn't water at all last winter. I couldn't because there was too much snow in my yard, but some winters are pretty dry. And if that's the case, if we don't get any significant rainfall, then you should water maybe once or twice a month in the wintertime.
I have my drip system turned off, so I just hook up the hose and figure I'm going to spend about an hour going around and watering, especially the big trees. So winter watering is important to remember. And you had a question.
It's important to group our plants together for the amount of water that they need, right? So you don't want to put one that doesn't need so much with one that needs more.
That's true. So her question is about grouping plants together according to their watering needs. Sometimes we can do that. Sometimes when we move into a house, what the landscapers have done is put one line here and one line there, regardless of whether they're trees and shrubs and plants that have different water requirements. So sometimes the way to work around that is you can add emitters, say to the trees, add emitters that if the plant needs less water, you would adjust, put in an emitter that lets in less water. We have a whole class on the drip systems and that kind of thing. If you have a drip system, that's great. You don't have to go out there and hose, but you have to maintain it and you have to understand how much water the plants are getting. Because when folks come in, we do a lot of troubleshooting. People come in with a baggie every day, and this plant is sick. What's going on? How much do you water it? I don't know. Okay, that's a big question. When do you fertilize? I can't remember if I ever fertilized. So already there are two potential problems there that may contribute to whatever's going on with the plant. Nevertheless, we do have the doctor. Each one of us is a plant doctor here, it seems. And we have a microscope projects up onto a big computer screen, and we can look at what's going on and try and determine what the problem is. A lot of times, folks will come in and they swear, I have no bugs in my yard. There are no aphids. And again, I'm thinking, where do you live? I might move into that neighborhood because that sounds pretty good. And then we put the leaf under the microscope and it looks like a traffic jam. They all panic because they're camera shy. So a lot of times bugs are too difficult, too small for us to see. So anyway, watering is a complicated issue and it involves a number of factors. But the first is how much is going on in your system, and read the guide, and then use the rebar, and learn to kind of get a feel for your plants. Do they wilt every day? Do they look like they're burned? Do they look like they're soggy? So we're passing around a sign-up sheet, and if you are interested, you can put your name and email there, and you'll get emails about all kinds of subjects that we send out. We don't send our list out to anybody else, so you won't get advertising. It'll just be related to gardening and what's going on here, what the next classes are, that sort of thing. Yes, ma'am.
If your plants are burning, so you have something to burn, what's causing that? Well, usually, sometimes when you will, I know it's usually they need more water, but some of them start, burning. It's just
So the question is, how to know what's going on with your plants. If it looks wilted or burned, some plants just struggle in the hot afternoon sunshine that we have. Maybe it's a plant that really ought to have more shade. And that's something, if possible, if it's in a pot, maybe you can move it. But one of the other factors about gardening here is that the afternoon sun, especially in the summertime, can be really hot and dry. June and July, we have practically no humidity. We have these hot, dry winds. And we put new plants in because it's summertime, it's ready to go, and yet there's no moisture. And we water our plants, but we can't give them humidity. That only happens when we get the monsoons. A lot of times, that will make a big difference in how your plants look. It's when do we get some rain and some humidity, even though it isn't a whole lot. Usually, you have to determine what's going on, give them some water if that helps. If it's too much sun and it's in a pot and you can move it, then that's the thing to do. You're asking about misters? Misters can help some plants, yeah.
Just to comment on hers, sometimes when you do get browning, it wouldn't hurt to bring it in because a lot of plants that are getting too much water will just turn brown. And they're just, it's just instant, and it'll happen very, very quickly because they're too wet. Usually if you have burning, you'll get a crease around the tips of the edge and you still have green leaves. So kind of be careful, like Doug said, our first instinct is to throw more water on that. It's not necessarily true. If you're unsure, moisture meter, bring us clippings. We can try to talk you through and try to figure out what actually is going on. Okay, so we've watered, we planted. So maintenance. We're all gardeners. We all like to go around and putz in the garden. So we're fertilizing 3 times a year, 4 with evergreens. Deadheading is very important, especially if you have plants that continue to bloom like this. These always need to be deadheaded. It'll keep the blooms continual. Pruning, the time to do that usually is springtime, before they leaf out. We do all our pruning in the spring. You can clean up in the fall. It's very, very important, especially if you have diseases such as black spot, mildew, any of those fungal issues, that you clean up your area really well, rake your leaves, put it in a bag, and dispose of them. Anytime you have a fungal issue, you do not want to reintroduce that back into your soil. Fungal issues are soil borne to begin with. With our winds, we get wind flowing, birds pops all around on your soil and then jumps into the trees. That's how it spreads. So wait until springtime to do any major pruning. Fall cleanup, you can prune your perennials back a little bit. I wouldn't do them all the way to the ground. That extra level of protection keeps frost from happening. It also protects the ground from snow and all that other stuff. So it's kind of important to wait. Also, if we do a lot of heavy cutback in the early fall, if we do happen to get a really cold spell in January, you're going to get extra dieback from that. So I always start with, just clean things up to begin with, and then later on I will trim as far down as I need to do. That's I can't say. Yeah.
The chances are, in your yard, you may have javelina deer, rabbits, chipmunks, gophers, moles, or any combination of those. If you have all of them, my condolences. But animals are part of life here. I guess I discovered that my yard, I think, is an ancient pathway for javelina. It seems like the whole clan travels through, and I hear them banging around, and sometimes they dig up things, and other times they just walk through. So it's just part of life. If you have a fenced-in garden where you grow maybe your flowers, your vegetables, your roses, that sort of thing, that's great. You may have gophers, moles. If you don't have any pack rats, whatever, chipmunks, it's kind of changing from year to year, which seems to be the Hunter's group. I had this little rabbit family in my yard, and I don't know why so many other animals around, like the coyotes, why they're still there, but they are, and they eat certain things. So one of the strategies is to try and pick out plants that are less interest to these animals. And in general, those are herbal plants. So by that I mean sage, Russian sage, autumn sage, lavender, rosemary, herbs. And we have lists of plants that are on our website, plants that they're less likely to eat. There are no guarantees, but chances are they're less likely to eat a plant that has fuzzy or thick leaf, that sort of thing. On the other hand, I understand javelina eat prickly pear cactus, including the thorns. So you never know what's going to happen.
we have some products like these, which are like pellets. They are repellents. They're not going to kill the animals. They're not going to harm anything in the yard. But if, for example, a new plant is being attacked, and this is often the case, animals like the new growth, you can maybe circle a plant with this to try and keep it away. These pellets, and this comes in a spray as well, tend to have a smell that the animals don't like. If they get wet, if it rains, they have a kind of a texture they don't like. So sometimes that can help. Otherwise, I think the main thing is you have to learn what happens in your yard, what plants like and don't like. You can look around the neighborhood, see what's thriving, talk with the neighbors to see what they planted and then disappeared overnight or in a couple nights. You just learn by that. Everyone's yard is going to be different. And we have an entire class on gophers, pests, bugs, and so on. So it's an issue, but it's one that if you learn how to manage, it's something that you can still have a successful garden.
There's also gopher shields if you're in a spot where you have gophers, you're near a field where you see them kind of creeping in and have planted before and your plants have died. These are actually 5-gallon, basically a pot that you put your plants in and then you put it in the ground so they can't dig through. Eventually your roots will go through, but usually by that time your plants are hopefully strong enough where they can withstand a little bit of munching on. Like you said, we do have a full class on that, but it's really important if you have gophers to get on it quickly. The old expression, they reproduce like rabbits. Gophers are worse. They have 3 families a year, usually in the summertime. So if you just let them go, you're going to be overrun really quickly. So there's a YouTube video that'll go all the way through that too. So we've done animals.
Well, speaking of YouTube videos, all the classes that we do here are archived on YouTube videos. I think there are hundreds of them, so you can search for whatever subjects, vegetable gardening, fruit trees, pruning trees. This class is, you can see several versions of it, but almost any subject that you might be interested in is there. Most of the time the videos are about an hour, so it doesn't take too much time, but if you want to catch up on something that you missed, it's all there. And also remember that the Waters website is a resource for you as well. Lots of information there, as well as the class schedules.
One other thing that I'd like to mention while you're shopping for plants, we are very seasonal around here. So in the springtime we get flowers that bloom, the lilacs we get in, forsythias, columbines, all that spring blooming stuff. So when you're planning your garden and thinking about it, and it happens to be springtime, you're going to find just springtime stuff. So kind of plan accordingly. So, in the summertime you can come back and get your crepe myrtles and your butterfly bushes. Or you can come back in the fall and get your lardias, your rudbeckias, your rocket seasons, or your coneflowers, your grasses. Also, when you are looking through the nursery, when you read a tag, those tags are printed for the entire country, not Prescott, Arizona. So when something says full sun, always ask someone to make sure that is correct. Because a lot of plants, like the ones that are on the left side of Doug, those are all shade plants. They cannot take our full sun. Hydrangeas are one of those that can't take our full sun. But normally you would put them right out in the middle of the, so you can enjoy them. But you have to kind of plant strategically here because full sun here is very, very intense because of our elevation.
Same thing about the tags. They will often give you dimensions.
And if you see a range, it's going to be 2 to 4 feet tall and wide. Figure on the 2 feet because you're living in Prescott. So that's one of the questions people always want to know is how big is this going to get? How quickly does it grow? Well, it's tough to say how much a plant is going to grow in 1 year, but generally speaking, you go with a lower number when you see a range as far as height is limited.
And it's just because of the soil that we have, the lack of humidity, except for July and August, because of our monsoons. That's the only time we really have humidity here. We also have to deal with that southwest wind from March till usually when monsoons kick in. Usually at that point the wind kind of dies down and we don't have to worry about it anymore. So there are a lot of factors that make planting here challenging, but there are a lot of things that we love about being here, and it's doable. It's just you have to kind of rethink the way you used to do things. So that being said,
Well, as an example, a lot of folks come in and they'll talk about the roses they used to grow with grandma, back in Illinois, and or the citrus trees they had in California. And unfortunately, you can't grow citrus here or will not survive the winter. But roses do really well. So you can probably have roses that are even nicer than grandma's if you still have that memory. It's just a question of learning what's going to work, and anything that's in here is going to work. That's why we bring them in.
and as long as you don't have beer.
Or a hailstorm.
So with that being said, if you have deer, don't plant roses. Or put them somewhere where they can't get to them. Yeah. Yes?
I like to talk about the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension is another resource that's in town for newcomers. And they do a lot of stuff with master gardeners and with classes for different things. If anyone does not know about cooperative extension, I just happen to bring some brochures.
That's nice, I appreciate that.
Did everybody hear that? So the lady in the back was talking about the cooperative extension, which is just down the road on Rodeo Drive. And actually many people here at Waters are master gardeners, have been to the program. I volunteer and work sometimes at the help desk, which is similar to what happens here. People will bring in their sick plants. What's going on? What do I do? What kind of plant is this? What is this insect? It's a great resource, and we work together with them to try and provide, as you know, science-based information to the public. It's not so much, well, my neighbor, mixes 1 ounce of this and shakes in a little bit of salt and it works to keep the ants away. Maybe that does, but if there isn't any science behind it, you probably won't get much of an encouragement from the cooperative extension.
Okay, I think we're going to just open it up to question and answer. So if you guys are having a problem and would like to share, we'll definitely try to answer them for you.
I have a question on here. Do you have a list of plants that do well? Say I leave the area for the winter. So plants that will stay, that will winter over without rain.
That will be part of the handouts that you'll get if you signed up the email sheet. Okay, we have different plants for different, ones that are good for shade that do well here, ones that are good for full sun, trees, so forth and so on. I think, as a matter of fact, that list actually comes from the Yavapai Cooperative Extension.
So her question was that she's only here through the summertime and not up here in the winter, which is kind of a unique situation, especially if you've got newly planted plants, because when you plant, if we have a dry winter, your plants are going to be dead when you come back. It's guaranteed. So it's one of those things that if you are looking at putting in new plants, you kind of need to consider that. You'll need to be up here at least once or twice a month. You don't need a ton of water, especially if it's deciduous. You're just keeping that root system moist. If we are getting snowfall and rain throughout the winter, you probably are okay, but you can't count on that. Or you want to go with the yuccas, the cactus, and that type of thing to keep your transportation down. Because anything evergreen, deciduous will need water. You can't just say you're on your own. Once it's established, usually you're better off, but if you're just now planting, you want to water. It's really important.
Speaking of yuccas, is there, I guess they don't really require a lot of water, but they do require some. There's also nutrients or something that maybe could help them a little bit. Is there any recommendation?
Her question was yuccas. Yes, they do require some water, especially when they're newly planted. They just need to get that root system going. Are you going to water them twice a week? Probably not. Probably once a week will be fine. But you'll still need to water for a little while. Nutrients, we do feed them just because we're doing it anyway. They don't need as much as a Colorado spruce or one of these shrubs. They don't need it that
So,
much.
the
But
second answer is yuccas. I did think, there's also the cactus juice.
Mhm.
Can you use it on yuccas?
Absolutely, yeah.
And
You
that's
can-
more calcium.
Right, yeah, and you can use it, food is food. If you're going to put it on cactus, they don't need as much as the other stuff. I would just feed them once a year or every 6 months instead of the ongoing fertilization.
We're building a new house and we're moving in late October, early November. And according to the HOAs, they want the landscaping done within 3 months. Any problem planting in the winter?
His question was, he's moving in November and his stuff needs to be planted within 3 months. Can you plant in the wintertime? Here, the nice thing about planting here is you can plant at any time. There are better times to plant than others, but you still can plant at any point. November through January, basically, yes. You'll just need to water less. You're just kind of keeping that stuff moist. Evergreens, you're not going to be watering like you would normally do until the heat kicks in March and April.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And another one of your classes, they talked about insecticide that you put on your plants. The last 2 summers, a swarm of blister bugs has come in and totally stripped my butterfly bushes. So will that protect it, or do I have to with a sword or something?
We've been out of this for about a month and a half. This is multi-purpose insect spray. This is one of the best bug sprays out there. We were selling the triple action, and the reason I don't like triple action, it has the same ingredient as this does, but it has neem oil in it. And I don't like putting oil-based products on plants this time of year because it's so hot, it tends to burn. But you can if you do it at the right time. If you put it on at night, so it has all night to absorb in, you won't get the burning like you would if you put it in the middle of the day. So this works on 100 different types of bugs. This is one of those products that should be in your nursing.
What's it called again?
Say that again?
What's it called again?
Water's multi-purpose insect control.
So will that keep them from eating it?
Yes. There's permethrin. I was getting backwards. Permethrin in here that is a residue that stays on the plant. So when they start eating it, they die. Yeah. And blister beetles are really one of those that they just invade. They'll devour basically one plant and then they'll move on to the next. They don't just bite here, bite there like a snail or a grasshopper or something, but they will devour your plant.
That works on grass.
Yes, it does. If you actually hit, it's a contact killer too, so if you hit them with it, it will kill them.
Will it kill bees?
It will. So what we always say when you're applying any product is you want to do it usually early in the morning or later in the evening when most of your bees are have kind of gone.
So I heard the word grasshopper mentioned, and so I'm going to talk about this for a little while. As Michelle pointed out, the spray works on grasshoppers, but it's a contact spray. So good luck as soon as you approach grasshoppers, usually they jump away. So we have a product that's called Nolo Bait. And this is kind of unique. And the way this works is you spread it out, you can put it in little containers around the edge of your yard. It is a virus that the grasshoppers ingest when they eat this. And they slowly start to fail and then they die. But before they die, the other grasshoppers who see that their friends are not doing very well, eat them. And they get some of the Nolo Bait, they get the virus. And then if that grasshopper happens to have some eggs, well, when those eggs hatch, they have the virus. So even though this takes a little while to happen, over a period of about 3 weeks, the grasshoppers will, just be basically eliminated from your yard. And once they eat this, they're much less interested in eating anything in your yard. The grasshoppers, like the blister beetles that you mentioned, can really take over a yard and eat a lot. And so this is a very organic way to deal with it. The virus does not affect any other animals, and it's not it's not the insecticide. It's the virus that they eat. And so Nolo Bait.
Yes.
Grasshoppers and crickets, I believe.
Weeds. When's the best time? Because I seem to get different weeds every month to do like pre-emergent or something to battle.
This is our pre-emergent. It's the ornamental turf and ornamental weed grasshopper. Now is a great time to get this in. Basically, any weed that's up, you'll want to use this spray to kill them. This is it stops germination, so it's working on those seeds that have fallen in the past before it comes up. During the monsoon, you will start to see your weeds pop up immediately. So get this down now. The rain basically creates a blanket with it, so the seeds won't germinate on it. So now's a great time to get that down. Yes?
I purchased a house that has the fabric with all the gravel on top of it, but I have a large number of trees. Some of them are very well established, others are kind of newbies. Is there some special way that I would fertilize and water the less established trees with this junk on top of it? I shouldn't say junk, because
Her question was fertilization on top of weed fabric, and as long as it's weed fabric, you're good to go, because fabric is breathable.
if it's plastic,
If it's plastic, tear it out.
Tear it
Get
out.
rid
Okay.
of it.
All right.
Plastic will not let your plants breathe. It basically creates a moisture barrier, so they're just going to die.
can I clear it out just around it, or do I need to pull it out of the whole yard?
The plastic, I
Yeah,
would get rid
if
of
I
it.
have it.
Yeah, if you have it, I'd get rid of the whole thing.
Good.
But, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, as long as it's not around your plants, I would definitely give yourself enough space for the plant to grow. One of the things that we always get is I'm watering right by the trunk, and my tree is this big.
Right, you need more.
This is not where you should be watering. This is where you should be watering.
Okay, so I need to consider the root ball.
As your trees and plants grow, your water system grows with it. So if you just moved into a house and your sprinklers are right here, you're going to have to do some sprinkler work because your emitters need to be moved out to here.
Okay.
So back to follow up on your question about the weed block and the rocks. I have the same situation in my yard. Not plastic, it's weed fabric.
Okay.
So I fertilize and I use the pre-emergent. The pre-emergent really needs to be watered in. Fertilizer, I usually just wet it a little bit, make sure it doesn't blow away because it's a light product.
Okay.
But the way I did this is a couple of winters ago, we hadn't had much rain at all. So I put down the pre-emergent, I put down the fertilizer, and then I got one of these little old-fashioned lawn sprinklers and just turn it on full blast and just went way up in the air into the trees and cover it a certain area. And I used my stopwatch, and after about 10 or 15 minutes, I would just pull the hose to another area. So I was able to do the winter watering, the fertilizing, and the pre-emergent all at the same time.
Yeah, I don't use pre-emergence, I'm an idiot, I hand weed. But I know underneath my apricot trees I have the fabric. I'm assuming in the rest of the lot I just kind of pull aside the rocks and look for, what, black plastic? Or green plastic or something to see what I have?
That's what I would do.
Okay.
Like I said, as long as it's not on your plants, it's not such a worry. You know, if it's just a gravel area, I wouldn't worry about digging the whole thing up, but just protect your plants.
Okay.
Get it out.
Got it, get it out as much as I can.
So I'm just gonna add to that, we moved in, we had 4 evergreens, I had to cut down 2 because they died before someone told me it was because of the plastic.
Because of the plastic,
So we
okay.
pulled up the plastic in the dirt and found another layer of clear plastic under that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be surprised at what
So
I
just,
find.
yeah.
Because I want to plant some evergreens, so now I know if I have plastic, I can. Thank you.
So anyway, just to follow up on that, you don't really want plastic anywhere in your yard because it's impermeable. The water will not drain through it. If you have the real weed block, which is a fabric, and a lot of neighborhoods require that be put on in the yard before you do any planting. It's part of an HOA regulation. That's okay. The landscaping walk on top of that is okay. They're designed to let water and fertilizer flow through them. But if you find plastic, you know, then you're not going to get water to those plants where the plastic is.
Okay.
I have some oak trees, which I think are oak, and I was wondering about pruning them. They have multiple trunks, so I think I'm supposed to cut the limbs off to make one good trunk. Is that right? And do it in the fall?
Her question, she has a oak tree, probably scrub oak, and she just wants to kind of create this tree. And I usually start at the bottom and just kind of figure out what it's going to look like and kind of go from there. If I have one main trunk that's prominent, then you can go ahead and make it one tree. But a lot of them are multi-stemmed, and you just kind of want to start at the bottom and kind of bring out the bottom layer of that, so you get that multi-stemmed tree look.
And there's a video just about pruning, and it's given by an arborist from Johnny's Tree Service, and it's really great because he has on white paper, he shows you where to make the cuts. You know, it's hard to imagine, okay, cut here, cut there. He has a drawing that shows where the cut should be, and he's got a lot of good information on how to prune trees properly. You have to be careful if you know, some gardeners that are less knowledgeable and skilled, their idea is, they'll just chop it all off because that's quick and easy. That isn't always the best thing for a tree. Pruning is really, you know, more of an art than science about it, I think. And so, but if you watch that video, it's pretty informative.
You commented that, you know, you've got these kind of bushes here, this time of year, and whatnot. If you have it here, I can plant it that day. Like, this is the time of year to plant that.
Absolutely. Her question was about the seasonality, and basically you can plant any time here. There's no wrong time. The only time I kind of are iffy about it is evergreens in June. You never want to plant an evergreen in June. There's better times to plant. So if you're thinking of an evergreen, we're fixing to hit the perfect time. August and September are perfect times to get evergreens in the ground. They get 3 or 4 months before the cold comes, and then we get another 3 months, March, April, May, before you know, the heat in June comes back, and that dry wind that we always get. Never a bad time to plant. There's just better times than others.
We actually kind of get kind of reconstruction. They always say put like 3 inches of mulch on top. In my area, it's called like fabric and a lot of rocks. So why would I want to mulch on top of that?
Her question was about the 3 inches of mulch on top. Basically, your mulch is your rocks. Mulch is to help keep that moisture level in, and with rock on top of it, it actually does that. It protects the top layer of soil from crusting. So your rocks are doing that. One thing with mulch is you kind of want to be careful and not get that right up against your plant because it can cause rot. So it can go overboard where you're protecting the plant too much and it'll kill it that way. The other thing with a lot of mulches, when we get into the field, our little rodents love that stuff. So make sure if you're doing that, use a cedar mulch. They don't like that on your plants, and that'll help. I think our time's about up, so I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. And if you guys have any more questions,